Hey gamers, welcome back to another episode of Part-Time Gamers Club. On today's episode, we're going to be speaking about the top fighting games in our personal opinion. But first, let me introduce my co-hosts, Gerard, Mike, say what's up.
What up?
What's up?
And I'm, of course, Giovanni. So, guys, let's start off with what you guys have in your third place as your top 3 fighting games.
Mike, you can do the honors.
I'll do the honors. So my third place rank would be Killer Instinct. Or Instinct. I can't be speaking right now. But that would be my third choice.
I got Killer Instinct as third too.
You got Killer Instinct as third as well? Wow.
Yes. Yes, I do.
So for my third, I actually have Tekken 4 as mine.
All right.
Okay.
So I understand why Killer Instinct, by the way, and I do not disagree that it should be up there. I do think it's kind of low though, but some foreshadowing for later in the podcast.
I do agree. Maybe I wouldn't argue anybody putting it higher at all.
Yeah. And I think I can explain the reason why it's higher for me later, but Tekken 4 just comes in at third.
I'm just surprised you have Tekken 4 on your list. It's top 3.
So here's my theory, or here's my thoughts. Okay, Tekken 2, I played a long time ago. Right, this is like my introduction to fighting games. This is Tekken 2. I enjoyed Tekken 2.
That's the first time you played a fighting game?
Yes, that was the first time I played a fighting game. Was Tekken 2. I'm letting you know I didn't play that. My first game was not Street Fighter. My first game was not Soul Calibur, even though Soul Calibur, in my personal opinion, is my favorite fighting game. It's definitely doesn't deserve to be on top 3, but it was my favorite fighting game. It's a personal favorite. But Tekken 2 was too difficult for me when I first played it, and I didn't understand why people liked fighting games because Tekken 2 was so hard.
In other words, you sucked.
Yes, I was. It was my first fighting game. It was my first fighting game. 1 and 2. I was young. I was like single digits. In age. Single digits. I don't remember when. I was younger than 10. All right.
Single digits.
Single digits. Gamer lang, man. Gamer shorten. But Tekken 4 is the first time I revisited the fighting games as a whole, because I was like, oh, Tekken 4 looks nice. It looks good. This is the time when they started polishing the models and things like that, because Street Fighter never appealed to me at the time because it was 2D. And Soul Calibur, I had Soul Calibur 1, or not Soul Calibur 1, excuse me, Soul Calibur 2, and I enjoyed the game, but I was never like into it for the multiplayer. I was just playing the stories. Tekken 4, it was the first time I actually played the game in multiplayer, and that is when I started enjoying and seeing the appeal of fighting games, because 1, I had the skills appropriate to actually do the combos, but 2, Tekken 4 had this thing that no other fighting game had at the time, and that was just simply polish. Like Soul Calibur 2, or I think Soul Calibur 3 was out at the time of Tekken 4. I may be wrong on that, but at the time, Soul Calibur wasn't as polished as Tekken was. And it really showed in the gameplay, especially as a casual for me, and it really appealed to me, but it also appealed to the mass populace. It wasn't until like later I discovered how big Tekken is. Even to this day, Tekken is one of the 3 or 4 mainstream fighting titles that keeps on being like flagship games of fighting games.
It is.
Is Tekken.
I think there's a new one coming out, or it
already came out. Tekken 8. Yep. So that Tekken 4 is, my opinion, the not only introduction for casual gamers, because I believe Tekken 1 through 3 was too casual, or not hard enough for the casuals. I may be wrong on that, but Tekken 4 was when I noticed, and when I see other people make lists, they usually mention Tekken 4 as an example because of the story as well. So that's why I put Tekken 4.
If I was doing the top fighting game franchises, Tekken would be in my top 3. But as an individual game, there's not one individual Tekken game that I would put over the 3 that I have. That's just me.
Well, I mean, I can't. It's kind of foreshadowing what I was gonna say as my second. So I'm gonna lead off with my second choice. If we
go for it,
their place. My second choice was between Tekken 2 or Tekken 1, but I would put the edge more to Tekken 1 just because I guess I'm just more of an original kind of type of guy, and then I just loved how it started. So Tekken 1 would be my second choice.
Jesus, you guys both got Tekken in there. I got Tekken in my top 3.
Are we gonna go to 2? Because my 2.
Right. Yeah, we're going to.
Yeah, go with your 2.
My 2 was already spoiled. It's Killer Instinct.
I thought you were gonna have Killer Instinct at number 1. To be honest,
no. My number 1 is like unanimously number 1 in my opinion. What's your number 2, Gio?
Mine's a Street Fighter 2, and we spoke a little bit about this off camera, but I feel like at that time it really separated itself from the pack, and it helped fighting games continue to evolve. Street Fighter 2 and show the potential for the mainstream audience, which wasn't a big audience back then. You're thinking about early 90s, but Street Fighter 2's I gotta have a Street Fighter game in that list. If some people put 4 because 4 kind of reinvented Street Fighter and brought it back out to the masses and put fighting games back on the map again, I wouldn't argue that either. But I feel like not having a Street Fighter game in the top 3 is just disrespectful. That's me.
That's your opinion, okay?
Yeah, I know it is, Mike, and I'm saying it, and I bet you there's a lot of people that agree with me.
It's hard to argue against Street Fighter, though, so I can't. And I would put that like I would have made it number 3 or 4 or
Street Fighter. Street Fighter's number. Yeah, Street Fighter's in top 5. Street Fighter's 100% in the top 5.
Most definitely has a
okay. I could, I guess, accept that.
If I was gonna pick a Street Fighter, it'd be Third Strike for me personally. Not really any reason. I think the 1, 2, and 3 are probably like the best Street Fighter games of all time. It's just really a preference.
4 and 5 have been very popular. Very popular.
5 base game or 4 base game. Actually, no, both base games absolutely sucked. It wasn't until the expansion deals or the DLCs came out, like the extra characters, and they started polishing the balance.
I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know what you're talking about because those games had critical acclaim when they first came out, and I remember Steve, who's the biggest fighting game fan that I ever knew, when his Street Fighter 4 came out, he was like, finally they made a good Street Fighter game again, a good fighting game. Like not saying like Soul Caliburs and stuff weren't good in between that time frame, because they were, and that's one of the games. Those were some of the games we were playing, like Dead or Alive. He played some of the Tekkens too. He was definitely into Tekken as well. So I knew all about them, but
I might be misremembering 4, but I do know 5 had a weird. Like people were saying
5 is the one you're talking about, because 5 is also the one that's lasted a lot of years because it was all those DLCs. Yes, that you're right about. But 4 was the one that put Street Fighter back on the map.
Yeah, I'll take back my claim about 4, but 5 is the one I definitely remember being that weird. Excuse me.
I think did they release 6 yet, or is there a 6 coming out?
6 already been released. It was released at the same time around Tekken 8. All the flagship games released. Big popular ones.
We decided to talk about them today.
Yeah. I mean, it wasn't recent. Like it was like a few months ago that they released those games. But yeah. Let's go back. I know we skimmed over it. Let's give our spiel real quick about Killer Instinct, because I know you guys were holding off talking about Killer Instinct till I said it. Killer Instinct is just basically, I would say, a gold standard for fighting games. Like Street Fighter is in itself impeccable, but it's hard to reproduce what Street Fighter does. Likewise, with Tekken and Soul Calibur are already fighting in the same, like, I don't want to say arena, like the same kind of play style and gameplay. So it's really hard to introduce a new one into them, into that like Frontier, but when you like get out of those those mechanics, Killer Instinct is like, oh, this is what a fighting game designed to be good for all skill levels feels like. Because good for the casuals, good for the hardcores.
I remember when it first came out, how like that kind of took over the fighting game world. Like it was this like out of nowhere, because you had the other franchises out there at that time, like Street Fighter. You had what was the one you mentioned earlier?
Tekken, Soul Calibur.
No, I don't think those two games were out at that time. Killer Instinct, because no, Mortal Kombat was out.
Oh, that was that was off camera.
Street Fighter. We're talking about the original ones. You said it earlier, off camera. With the blonde hair dude. Yes. So you had those franchises, and then out of nowhere, and those were big franchises at the time, especially in the fighting game genre. Killer Instinct comes out of nowhere and just takes over. And then we don't hear another Killer Instinct game for God knows how long after that. I mean, nobody knows why, but it kind of just happened that way. But Killer Instinct, with the introduction of the combo breaker and stuff like that, and it was just next level, man. It was different, and for it to just come out of nowhere the way it did, I don't even think that development team was popular at that time either. So what they did with that game, I mean, you could tell they put their heart into that game, and it's kind of like we talked about in some of the other episodes where some of these independent developers, if they get the chance, it can really blossom into something amazing.
All right. That's a little spiel of Killer Instinct 2 real quick. So I think we've talked about all our 2s so far.
Yeah, now it's number 1, which I think we're pretty much.
I don't know
what Mike's number 1 is, but I know what mine is.
I know what mine is.
I know what mine is.
I'm gonna say for me, personally, if you guys have ever played the fighting games, you ever seen it competitively played, arcade style, console, whatever you want to, Marvel vs. Capcom 2 is the number 1 game in my opinion for fighting games. Just it was on a different scale.
I agree.
It was just different, man. You had to be there at that time to experience it, that era when it happened, because Marvel vs. Capcom 2 was just. Because that was like the Smash Bros. Before Smash Bros. Kind of deal.
It was not the Smash Bros. Before Smash Bros. Because original Smash Bros. Came out in Nintendo 64.
No, but what I'm saying is with that introduction of all these different characters, your favorite comic characters facing your favorite fighting characters, like that introduction, it wasn't just these are the same characters from Street Fighter, these are the same characters from whatever game you're playing, Mortal Kombat. It was like introduced. Obviously, it was a merger between Capcom and Marvel.
I'm gonna say this, Shio. There before MV2 or MVC, I think 1 came out in the 90s. There was a lot of collaboration fighting games. We had the Capcom collection between KOF. We have Street Fighter versus Capcom. We also have
yeah. You're right.
Fatal Fury.
You're right.
But as I was saying, MVC 2 is my choice, but MVC as a whole has the best ideas and is probably the best tag fighting game in existence.
Absolutely.
And
what was your number 1?
Because that is my number 1 is Marvel.
All right, so that's all 3.
I going to the arcade was strictly to play that game. Strictly just to play Marvel vs. Capcom, and it's the idea of just combining. I was just hooked on it for like the longest. So yeah, it's definitely my number 1 choice.
I feel like that game too, you can still play today. Like if somebody never played it, somebody the younger generation, and they're big fans of the fighting world games, like that genre, if they played that game, they would understand what we mean, because you have to play it to like. You won't get that feel that we had, like you talking about it, Mike. Like we went to the arcades to play that game specifically, and then when it came out on console, we were ecstatic because we didn't have to go to the arcade. You didn't have to spend money. I mean, you did to buy the game, but it was just good.
I was gonna say just simply like if I had MVC2 earlier than I originally played it, I think I would have been more. I probably would have been into the fighting game community as more often. I probably would have went competitive, or not. Well, I wouldn't say competitive, but like into the fighting game multiplayer community before I went into the FPS one. Because
you say that, and I want to say something because I feel like maybe I'm giving too much credit, but I don't know. Maybe Mike, you might agree with me. I don't know how you seen it back then at that days, but I feel like fighting games was the start of what we have now with the online play. Like fighting games in the arcades era drove that aspect of PvP. You know what I mean? Because it was so competitive at that time. If you went to the arcades, you were trying to take the guy that was on top. Like you were trying to take that guy that was holding it down. Yeah, everybody had their quarters lined up. They trying to take down the guy that thinks he's the biggest one there, baddest. And it created this competitive, because they had tournaments. They started creating tournaments at like Blockbuster and all that. I know I'm showing my age now because I mentioned Blockbuster, but am I right, Mike? That's when you started. And the Killer Instinct had a tournament too. You've seen all those tournaments.
You have the regulars that just go in there just to be, play. And you try, take them down. If you win, you stay on. Then other people's just joining and trying to take you down. Mm-hmm. It's always been competitive, and it's just always been like a line just to play that game. Damn, Blockbuster. I can't believe you didn't mention Blockbuster.
I showed my age, man.
Just to give you guys a breath of fresh air, excuse me. There is still one Blockbuster that exists.
There is, actually. Yes, there is.
No, there is one.
There's still one Blockbuster that exists. It is not bankrupt, or it doesn't exist anymore. It's still like out there. We can mention Blockbuster as a current thing. It's just no one will get it.
I remember I saw this thing that said it was a meme, and it said when people ask me how old I am or for ID, I pull out my Blockbuster card and shows. Yeah. I was like, yeah, you're showing your age if you have one of those.
Exactly.
No, what do you think about that, Gerard? Do you feel like am I wrong on that? Like
I can't give you a answer to that because I missed out on the arcade. I don't want to say lifestyle, but the arcade culture.
He was still in the single digits. That's why he was still in his.
Well, I would say like when I was in the single digits, or even when I was in the double digits, aka like when I was in my teens, I didn't have an arcade place that my parents would take me. Because
I forget that when me and Mike were doing that, we were like probably 10, 11, 12 years old. You were only like 3 or 4 at that time. So we didn't really bring you with us like that. He was always at the house. I mean, we played with you. We played games when we were at the house with you, and then I know Joseito wasn't really, I don't think he wasn't really big into fighting.
No, he wasn't. He basically played like horror games and shooters. Yeah,
because like when you played with me and Mike, some games, it was mainly like sports games because me and Mike were big into sports at that time, especially. So we didn't really play the fighting games with you like that because really we played them more at the actual arcades than we did at home. Because honestly, it was more popular on the arcades than on console back then.
I think also because like you had to have online internet and your internet had to be stable and the servers sucked. I mean, at the time we didn't have rollback net card.
Well, no, you're talking about when that's different, bro. This is before like.
Well, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. Like literally, you would have it on console and you would only fight against each other, but
or
like
or the computer.
Like online to face other.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. But so
wait,
like,
what's your number one?
No, I said it. I agreed. It was MVC2.
All three of us.
Like as a I don't want to say as a franchise, Marvel vs. Capcom is in all our first places. The only difference is for Gio and I, it's number 2, and for you is 1. That is the only difference. Marvel vs. Capcom is in all our first, unless you are picking number 2 over. You said just Marvel vs. Capcom.
Okay. I was like, wait, but yeah.
Well, I think that's it for us. Mm-hmm. Got anything else y'all want to get off y'all chest? No? Good? You agree? We know what's number 1 in our opinion.
Yeah, we know Marvel vs. Capcom 2 is the best. I would like to give an honorable mention to Virtual Fighter.
Of course, he fucking did.
No,
I mean, honorable mention is Mortal Kombat 2.
I was thinking about Mortal Kombat as well, and the only reason why I didn't say Mortal Kombat is that I loved Mortal Kombat, but I think if you ask me now, if in like in a lineup, if I would like to play Mortal Kombat 1, Street Fighter 1, Tekken 1, or like any fighting game, the first one, it wouldn't be Mortal Kombat. Ever.
It wouldn't even be Street Fighter for me either. Because Street Fighter, I think back then you could only play Ken and Ryu were the only two characters you could play in part 1. So it's a little different. You're right on that aspect. But I don't know, Gerard. I mean, Mortal Kombat 1... that was the introduction of fatalities and
you can't say 1 anymore. 1 is this as the new game right now. The new Mortal Kombat game is called Mortal Kombat 1. You have to say OG Mortal Kombat.
Oh yeah, OG.
Or just Mortal Kombat.
No, I gotta go. I gotta go. If I'm talking about the original games, the first ones that were made, obviously I still pick Killer Instinct, obviously because it was in the top 3. But I would put Mortal Kombat over most of them, to be honest, as the first, because the first Mortal Kombat was, I mean, they made a movie over Mortal Kombat, bro. It was a big deal.
Well, look, they made a movie about Street Fighter. They made a movie of
they were big deals. They were big deals.
How good or how bad it was.
And we had a conversation about this.
I didn't say they were good movies. But look, they were clearly popular.
I may like B-rated movies because I like the first Mortal Kombat movie, but that's besides the point. Anyway, what I was going to is I went back to play Mortal Kombat 1. I went back to play Street Fighter 1, or Street Fighter 2, technically speaking. I went back to play those kind of games, and Tekken 1 and King of Fighter and everything like that. And Mortal Kombat 1 just didn't stand up to the other number ones. And like going forward, Mortal Kombat eventually got like better. Like in my first Mortal Kombat that I actually enjoyed, well, I don't want to say enjoyed because I didn't play every single one, but like the first combat I actually owned was Deadly Alliance. Which that's really late. Exactly. The first Street Fighter I owned was Third Strike.
I will say, I think it was, I don't want to say it was 2. I think Mortal Kombat 2 was good too. I'd have to really look at, see the art cover and stuff and make sure I know which one I'm talking about. But I know, I want to say it was after 2 they started to downslide, and then Mortal Kombat was like off the map for a while until the reboot happened. I think I think it was PS3 and Xbox 360 days when they had that reboot again and revitalized the franchise. But I could see where maybe it didn't age well like the other games, what you're saying. If for someone that's never played it to go back and try those games, it might not. That's why I say Marvel vs. Capcom 2, for that specific reason, is the best fighting game in my opinion.
I can go back to play Marvel vs. Capcom right now.
The Marvel vs. Capcom.
Yeah, they age like wine. They just still good.
Yeah, like if it's at an arcade, like if I go to Dave & Buster's or Andretti's or whatever, and it's there, I'm playing. I'm fucking playing.
Yeah. All right.
So, all right, guys, that's it for us. Feel free to make sure that you mention your top 3 in your comments. If you agree with us, feel free to mention which one you agree with, so we know and we can have bragging rights. But other than that, guys, that's it for us at Part-Time Gamers Club. Make sure to like and subscribe, and we're out. Later.
Thank you for watching this episode of the Part-Time Gamers Podcast. Be sure to like the video and subscribe to our channel for more content like this. And follow us on our other social platforms on TikTok, Instagram, and Discord. Links for those will be provided in the description. Thank you again. We will see you on the next episode of the podcast. And make sure you make some time for video games. Peace.